I have this really beautiful calling of, I always say winning the culture for the kingdom. My workspace is generally not in the church. I'm not really called to the four walls of the church, just the four walls of the church. God is doing really something really cool right now where he's creating a bridge.
Artists, musicians, and creatives of all kinds. Looking for help balancing your passion to create with your everyday life? Not sure if your faith can coexist with your profession? Welcome to a place where real artists discuss real life. You're listening to The God and Gig Show. Visit godandgigs.com for show notes, links, and more information.
Hello, and thanks so much for making this podcast a part of your day. I appreciate it so much. And let me introduce myself if you're listening for the first time. My name is Alan C. Paul, and I'm a musician and author of the books God and Gigs, Succeed as a Musician Without Sacrificing Your Faith, as well as our devotional, Your Art, God's Heart, a 21-day devotional for creatives. And this podcast is all about helping you to build a better creative life from the inside out by applying timeless spiritual principles to the temporary creative problems that you might be facing. So thanks so much once again for listening. Please go ahead and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening. And please review the show as well, because it helps us to find out what you need to hear, what you'd like to hear more of, as well as helping us have more visibility on all podcast directories. I am so happy that you're listening today because today's interview is extraordinary. It tells the story of an independent artist who really found herself in the right place and the right time. But it was only because she pushed through some obstacles along the way. I'm talking about Naärai. Naärai is a wonderful, wonderful soul. I got to work with her on some projects a few years ago, and I've been following her ever since. And since we finally got to reconnect, she was able to share with me the inside story of how she ended up working with not one, but two of the most iconic artists of our time. And yes, I am talking about the Queen Bee herself, Beyoncé, and one of the most absolutely influential and probably just in the middle of everything in our culture has been one of the touchstones of that for the last 20 years. And I'm talking about Kanye West. Now, you might ask me, well, how did she end up working in both of these camps for a period of time? And what does that have to do with you? Well, let me explain what Naärai's talk and her explanations of how she got to this point is going to help you. You're going to hear how sticking with your dream and sticking with your goals, even when things seem like they're not going the way they're supposed to go, actually can be God leading you to the right place and the right time. And you're going to hear how sometimes you have to get out of your own way and ignore the voices in your head, because they can sometimes take you away from the blessing that you might just be about to receive. So Naärai is so open. She's so transparent with this, and you're going to be blessed by this talk. She's an amazing singer. She's an amazing actress. So everything you're going to be hearing is from the standpoint of an artist who gets it, who's walked the walk, talked the talk, and now is enjoying the blessings that comes from sticking with her faith and sticking with her dream for her creative gift. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and this interview. It's really going to be encouraging. Take some notes, listen in, and let's find out what Naärai has to share with us. Here's our interview. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to have this young, dynamic artist with me, because her and I have had the opportunity to work together under some really cool gigs, some great stories we have. We might share after the show or maybe behind the scenes, so you all want to hear some funny stories that we shared as working on the same event. But she is an amazing singer. She's got theater experience, and now she has moved out to LA, where she is working with some of the top artists and some of the most incredible experiences. I've been following your Instagram and trying not to have FOMO, because when she posts stuff and tells us what she's doing, it really shows what you're capable of as an independent artist. So I'd love to welcome Naärai Jacobs to the God and Gig Show. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we could finally do this.
I know, right? It's been forever. We met. Oh gosh, how many years ago was the Eva Jackie? Oh gosh,
That was 5 years ago this October.
wow. So 5 years, and now you're out in LA. So first, before we go like catching up, because we've already been trying to catch up over this call. For people who are just meeting you, just give them the 30-second elevator speech. Tell them who you are, what you do creatively, and kind of like just what you're all about as an artist, so that they can start to get to know you.
So I am Naärai, and I am a singer, songwriter, and actor. I started out in theater and then kind of realized I wanted to do more. So I started writing music and doing my own thing. And so I moved out to LA, of course, to release my own music and record my own music. And on my journey, I've had an opportunity to learn from and work for a lot of different people. But yeah, I'm just an all-around creative, really. That's really what I am.
There's so many of us that can have that same title, just like all around creative, like whatever comes to us, we got to do it. But you do have some incredible skills. You're an incredible vocalist. I remember, us being on the stage and you just knocking out these harmonies that were getting thrown at us. And just telling me a little bit about your dad. I know you have a musical, artistic, creative family, an incredibly artistic, creative family. Yeah. So talk a little bit about just how, your upbringing, your dad, and what did you see growing up that immediately like placed you in this path to being a creative?
Well, both of my parents sing, and my father was pursuing it as a career. And at the time in my hometown, that was just not a viable career, and it wasn't a viable career for Black people.
What hometown was that, by the way? Just fill that in.
Sarasota, Florida.
Gotcha.
I'm talking to you like it's just
no,
me.
It's okay. Like, yeah, I know. I got to remember there's somebody else on the other side. Like, where's she talking about?
So it's just not a place where, it's a place where a lot of people from New York will come and like gig, but to be living there and trying to make a living, it just was unheard of. And it sounded quite crazy to most people. But for me, I just saw someone being incredibly tenacious. And it was this constant grind, like how to light a stage, how to build sets, and then created his own theater company, and then went and costumed his own shows. And then because his actors didn't have cars, he would pick his own actors up, and then he cooked because he couldn't afford to feed them. And it was just like watching somebody like, by any means necessary, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize at the time how tenacious that was, how strange, if I could use that word, that was. I was just watching him work his behind off, and that was normal for me. And it wasn't until I got older and realized, when I decided, at first I said I wanted to just be an actor, and people were like, oh, that's not a real career. You need a real degree. And I'm thinking, well, my dad's doing it. I didn't realize he was barely making his bills. You know what I mean? But watching him, as a child, and it's funny how it happened as a child, he was just struggling, like all throughout until my senior year of high school. And I went to college, and then it took off. And I came back and things were completely different. And so it just taught me, we always like to control the process, but it does pay off if you keep at it. It just, you don't get to control when that happens. You don't get to control how that happens. And I have often encouraged myself by remembering his story since I've been out here in Los Angeles, because it has been so hard. And these last 2 years have been really fruitful, especially this last year and a half. And, people see that part and they're like, oh my God, your career is so amazing. And I'm just like, child, you don't know. Like, there have been so many really hard days, but I'm a firm believer, especially now having experienced some of it. When God has called you to something, he equips you to deal with the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. And so I watched him really naively and thinking, oh, dad's got it. And, this is how it works. And then being in my own, and though we're not the same industry necessarily, it's a similar grind. You work it until it starts to work for you, kind of thing. And I've called him a lot, and I've had that to lean on. But, my dad really taught me how to sing. My mom taught me a lot of technical stuff, but music is in our background. So my maternal grandmother was a music teacher. My uncle can sing, my mother's brother, all of my dad's brothers, and then their wives, most of their wives can sing. So all my cousins sing, and then we play and produce. And then my grandfather had a quartet. So I was just surrounded by music. I didn't even know, and this is going to sound really snooty, but I didn't know people couldn't sing. Like I would hear people sing and be like, what's wrong with you? Like everybody can sing, just because I was always around it. My church had a great music ministry, and most of us could sing and harmonize, and I mean in our sleep, because that's just the way we were taught. And so when I met people who couldn't do that, even now sometimes I have to like, even on professional gigs, some people struggle with harmonies. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? But I was just really blessed that I did have a foundation of incredible musicianship, even though I didn't realize it, and then watching hard work ethic. So now as an adult pursuing my own career, I have that to call on.
So that's amazing. Now I want to ask you, just remember filling in, we know each other. So fill in, what is your dad's company, theater troupe? And so that they can look that up too, because I'm so inspired even when I see, again, like what you just said, him building this, sticking with it in Florida, which I'm also in Florida. So I know how hard it is for independent artists in this arena where we have just beach and all this other stuff that people don't support the arts at like they would in maybe a major metropolitan area. So just tell him what exactly his theater group is.
It's called the West Coast Black Theater Troupe, and it's based in Sarasota, Florida. It is one of the only Black theater troupes in the state of Florida, and I think the most successful one in the country. Pretty sure. They have been very blessed to have this ironic kind of multicultural mix where a lot of his supporters and patrons are white. And that really has been the lifeblood of his company working the way that it does. It's just so many different cultures kind of making it happen. Like I said before, which was unheard of in Sarasota, Florida. Because if I may be very honest, Florida, we know Florida's racist. And
it's just true out there,
so just for that to happen is just, it's really incredible. So, these past, I've been out of college. I don't know if I want to say it on this show, but
how are you doing?
He's really been working well for like the last 10 years. I haven't been out of college that long, but like it started my freshman year when he bought a building and they paid it off, and they, as of now, have completely remodeled and refurbished the entire building. I just went and saw it 2 months ago, and it's incredible. They had their official ribbon cutting, and it's amazing just how full circle everything has been. You can literally, and it's so funny, so my dad, when my parents split up, he got this apartment on we call it on the Coconut apartment. It's on this street called Coconut Avenue, and it was literally just the worst bachelor pad anyone could ever have. 1 bedroom, is like shag like carpet, and that's where he held a lot of his rehearsals and cooked those dinners I was telling you about. And like, that was like the meeting place for a lot of his young actors, and they were like 19, 18, 21. And from the top of his building, you can see the Coconut apartment. It's really, really interesting.
Wow.
It's really incredible. But yeah, so that's his company. You can look up, I think it's wbttsrq.org. I think.
That's cool. We'll post a link to the show notes. I wanted to make sure I did a shout out to him, because that kind of formed your beginnings, right? Because like you just said, you saw how he built his career. You kind of just knew this was what you were born to do, that you wanted to be. So then you were in some of his productions. You were. So tell us.
Well, I didn't always know. I didn't always know. I knew I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I think a lot of us, as like, you're drawn to something, but you just don't know, can I really do this? And I know for me, because I grew up around so many great singers, I just didn't think I was that great of a singer.
Really?
No. And so I liked singing, and I like singing by myself. See, the thing in my family is it's almost like a rite of passage. Like, I know you can sing. You know what I mean? I was just like, no, I'm good. Like for years, I would tell my family, no, I'm not singing. My cousins would sing, and I just was terrified. I wanted to be, the cool thing about my parents, they were rocked with anything I said I wanted to do. They were full support. So I wanted to be an astronaut for a little bit. I wanted to be a doctor for a long while. That was really until like probably 12 or 13. I was seriously considering going to like medical school at Yale. Like I was serious about it. And
Okay.
then
I didn't know. I'm so glad you told me, because I really did think that this, like, you were just born into it, and that, you got this amazing artistic family. So yeah, like that's natural. You just become a singer.
looking back on it now, and even some of the gifts I have now, like vocal producing and directing and things of that nature, like I knew I liked watching him and I loved going to his rehearsals on the weekends. I wouldn't even hang out with my friends. I would go to my dad's rehearsals and just sit there and watch. That was fun for me. And looking back on it now, I'm like, I was so weird. I didn't even like, or not I was so weird, but like for that to have drawn me the way that it did, now I can see the through line. But at the time, no, I knew I enjoyed it, but I didn't know that's what I would do. And so finally, when I said I wanted to be a creative, I think first it was an actor. And then when I was in college, me telling my parents I wanted to sing, and both of them were like, okay, we were waiting.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
they
Like,
knew.
we knew this was coming. They knew it was coming, but they were just being incredibly patient with me to kind of find it. But yeah, it took me a minute, but they never imposed anything on me. They never made me do anything. And I think that's how I was able to find it and love it the way that I do, because I never had stage parents.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I can attest to. Probably was the greatest blessing, because you and I both know, we've seen the artists that you can tell that their parents kind of push them, and it never becomes a dream for them, and they probably and that's why they burn out or just crash, because either they're being pushed too hard, or they just never had the chance to, like you did, to process, well, there are other career interests, there are other things I like to do, and I'm just a well-rounded person that happens to be a talented, creative person. So that's huge. I hope some parents hear that on this podcast and realize you don't have to push your kids for them to be successful.
Oh, your kids will find it. Your kids will find it. You just encourage them and encourage consistency. That's the one thing my dad did tell me when I think I did have my first professional solo at 14. And I remember he heard I could sing. He said, I'm not forcing you to do this, but if you have something, we're at least going to see what you have. And then after that, you can decide what you want to do. But if you can sing, we're going to at least see how well you can sing.
That's awesome. So now let's talk about where you came to that realization, right? So you're watching your dad and you're in the world, but not like adopting it. So tell me your first major, like, I don't want to call it first big break, but you know how it is. Like when you kind of like get that light bulb and it's like, okay, now I want to do it now. Yeah. So what was that moment? And just describe like how you made that decision that now you do want to be a full-time creative and a musician and an actor.
I think around middle school, I went to a middle school that had like a arts program, a part of it. So I went to a school called Booker Middle School, and there was a VPA, visual performing arts program within the school. And that was visual art, that was acting, that was singing, like chorus, and I'm missing something. Oh, I think I like playing instruments, like violin, whatever. And we worked so hard. We worked hard to put on, we were part of competitions. We put on plays with all of the other departments, like the graphic made the programs and the musicians played before the show. And like, it was all encompassing. Oh, poetry and creative writing. And like the creative writing team made the flyer. Like they would make us all kind of come together in that way. And me working on my own without my father, because before then, my dad, I went to a private school. I bounced around a bit. So I went to a private school at my church. My dad was my theater teacher there. And then I started working with him again around 10, 11. And so that was the first time I was going through a creative process without my father. And I could really see like, oh, I like this. I'm good at this. You know, all the things I've learned with him, I can apply. I think it was the first time I was like, I'm going to be an actor, you know, you know what I mean? You know, I'm going to do my own thing. And I probably was like 13 because I know I left that school in the 8th grade. So I think I was around 13, maybe 14 years old when I finally decided, like, I think I want to pursue this. But, you know, people don't even realize once you decide you want to do this, you still have more discovery to go, because just wanting to be a creative or just wanting to be a musician is not specific. Where do you want to do this? how do you want to do this? In what genre? Like it as you go and you grow and you have different experiences, it specifies exactly what you want to do.
That's so good. And you're right. Is that I think we get caught up in the dream of just, like you said, kind of, we have a lot of skills and we're able to do everything. We want to do everything, I should say, but you can't. Like you have to be very intentional about picking, where is my particular gift supposed to be, and how am I supposed to impact the world, and how am I supposed to make a living, number one, doing this, right, that part. So talk about that a little bit. And I definitely want to get to where you did make the decision to move to LA, go out on your own. I remember reading some of those posts, and you were just describe those feelings for a second, like, because that's the big jump, I think, for most people, like when they decide. That's it, number one, just one word.
Absolute terror. So I, which is what led me to say that, I went to high school and everybody was saying, well, why don't you sing? Because I had a kind of traumatic experience as a teenager with a janky person, and decided, well, if this is the music industry, which it is, I don't want to be a part of it. I'll just act, because I don't want to have this feeling anymore. I just felt really hurt and betrayed by this particular individual. And so everybody was saying, yeah, you think that. So I went to college for acting. Acting is what I have my degree in. And before my first semester was over, everybody in my department knew I could sing. And it just completely changed my whole trajectory at college, because everyone to this day thinks I was a musical theater major. I was always acting and singing in a play, always. And kind of midway through, decided I was really missing music. And so I started working on an EP. That was kind of the beginning of the EP, craze and trend. And this is like 2013. I would save my money in college and go home on my breaks and record. And, kind of do that. So spring break, and then come back, and then summer break, and then come back, and then Christmas break for a while. And when I graduated, my plan as an actor, because my thing was, the EP for me was just going to be like my resume. As an actor, you have a headshot and resume. I was like, well, if I say I act, I have a headshot and resume. If I say I sing, I should have something that, proves that. So I was never planning on releasing it. I was never planning on doing anything with it other than just having it. And, this is still a time we were using CDs, right? So I was just going to have it in my bag and, oh, you sing? Yep, here you go. That kind of thing. My plan was to go to New York and to be on Saturday Night Live. That was my dream at that point.
Okay.
And my background singing to pay my bills, but I didn't want to sing at all. Not professionally. At this point, I'm like, I'm stepping out and recording. Like, this is as far as I want to go with this. And I just had this friend. I'd sung on his record, and he took me to lunch. He was like, I really want you to pursue singing. I was like, that's never going to happen. So he was like, cool. So let me take you to lunch. So he took me to lunch, and he said, I'm not going to tell you to do it. He said, I just want you to think about it. Can you promise me for a day you'll at least think about it? And I swear to you, Alan, this day I experienced God so clearly. Like, he just reminded me of all these different experiences I had throughout my life that was like, music is a part of this. Like, it's not just a gift you have to like play around with. Like, this is real calling type purpose stuff with music. And I remember after the end of that day, that's when I told my parents. So now I'm going back to college. I still have 2 more years of college, right? When this happens. And so at this point, I'm thinking, well, I can sing, but that just means I'm going to be a really great background singer. You know what I mean? Like, I was not thinking anything beyond that. And I came home after I graduated. So I'll backtrack a bit. My senior year, I'm trying to get to New York. So I'm making connections and I'm reaching out to people in New York. And I made a few connections and was like, okay, at least I know I can gig and like meet people. Because that's really the thing. And then towards the end of my last semester, no one was responding to my emails or phone calls. And I mean, no one. And I mean, I'm checking in with them all throughout my 3 semesters. And I get to my 4th semester and no one's responding. And so I remember I called my mother and I was heartbroken. She was like, well, baby, just come home. Come home and you can figure it out. So I came home, which I felt like such a failure. Because, your whole senior year, that last semester, I was like, so what are your postgraduate plans? And I'm thinking, I don't know. So I move home and I move back in with my dad, and I give myself a year to figure it out and move. And the plan was to move to New York at first, and my father had sent something. So Whitney Houston had a vocal coach. Whitney Houston is like my greatest inspiration ever. So he found Whitney Houston's vocal coach and was like, let's go to LA and work with him. Dopest parent ever, right? So we fly to LA, we work with this guy named Gary Katana, and while we're here, I feel God so strong, like this is where you're supposed to be. Now, I was never considering coming to LA. I thought people in LA were crazy and all like drug addicts and like crazy. And while I was here, I felt such a peace. I knew I was supposed to be here. So this is September, and this is around the time I'm saying I was going to move. Like, I'm going to move next month. So I go back home, and the plan now is work to earn money so I can move. And so I moved 11 months after I moved home to Los Angeles. And terror. I'm not even joking. I'm not trying to be funny. Like, it was, for me at that point, I was so sheltered. And I didn't even realize I was so spoiled in the sense that anything I wanted to do creatively was a phone call away.
Yeah. You were literally like in the you were the epicenter. Your dad's.
Absolutely. So now, even if I wasn't in Florida, if I wanted to, because there were people even in New York who were like, I know your daughter's moving to LA, but if she wants to move to New York, I can get her auditions on Broadway. Like, I had guaranteed opportunities if I wanted to go the quote unquote the easy route. And I'm not trying to say Broadway's easy, but for me, everything was a phone call away. Everything was a reach away. I knew casting directors. They were like family members and family friends, and I could get an agent, and like everything could have been much easier. But I was moving to LA where I had no real family, no close friends, no jobs lined up. Most of my money, like with everybody, you move with all this money. I moved, I think, with like $3,000. It was gone within like the first month and a half. I bought a car. And it was like, okay, God, I'm here. I was renting a room out of somebody's house. And just for at least 6 months, I just sat there in fear because I was like, I'm really out here. And now I have to like do stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and I was so young, bless my heart. I was 22 years old and I was so shy. And I just sat in puzzled in fear, or paralyzed rather, with fear. And then I remember I just started to go out and do open mic nights. So I booked myself to do an open mic night at a place called the GS Lounge. And it was the first time I sang in Los Angeles. And that was like I said, 6 months after I moved here. So it took me 6 months to even get the courage to go out and like do things. I'd sang at a birthday party or something like that for somebody, but that wasn't a real gig, right? So I started to go out, and then I realized at that point, it's not just about going out and sing. I need to meet people. I need to meet the musicians who are on the gigs. I need to meet the singers who are on the gigs so I can start working in my industry. Because that was one thing that was very important to me, and I had the support back home. Thank God. I was still very blessed. I didn't have to come out here and get like a rinky-dinky job. I had support from back home, paying my bills and things like that until I figured it out, which is very rare. But my goal was, like I said, to work in my industry. And so that took me a while. It really did. I moved in May 31st of 2015. I got my first paid gig September of 2016.
Oh, good gracious. So you literally, like, almost like you said, like you had to overcome. This is so important. Like, I want to park here for a second before we get to all the cool stuff that you did after this, right? Because it's like the story before the glory. So you had to, face your, number one, I'll kind of go back to college. Number one, you had to even get talked into adopting this career in terms of this particular niche, in terms of singing. Then you had to follow God's leading to go to a change your plan to go to a place you've never been before. And then you had to conquer your own fear of even stepping out and talking to people and letting them know, hey, by the way, this is what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Right. So just that process, I think we all go through it, but we all go through it in different ways. I kind of equate to the stages of grief. Like, we all have to go through those stages, but some people go through it like boom, 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 boom. And then they might look at someone like you and say, well, just get it together. Like, but you needed that time to process and to prepare. Do you feel like overall that it was necessary for you to go through that stage to kind of build your confidence?
Absolutely, because what happened during that time was I learned how to depend on God. You know, I think had I come out here and started booking things on my own, I would have thought it was me.
Yeah.
What I mean, what else would I have thought? Oh, I can sing and people are booking me. I came here and I had a year to work on myself. I started going to the gym. I lost a lot of weight. I got really disciplined with that. I got involved in a church and started serving. And so I got grounded first. Because if I had not been grounded and then started doing what I'm doing now, I would have gotten lost like a lot of some of the people I've had opportunities to work with who think that this defines them and this is their reason for being alive, or this is all I am. No, you're not. You know what I mean? Because when that's what you think you are, those in-between moments when you don't have a job will utterly destroy you.
Oh.
And that's what happens with a lot of people, especially moving out to Los Angeles. It eats your soul. Because not only are you working in the entertainment industry, you're working in the epicenter of the entertainment industry. Everything starts here right now. So when I moved here, people thought I was crazy because they were like, well, music is everywhere. It's in Atlanta, it's in New York. And I was like, of course, God knew, right? As soon as I moved here, everything started migrating back to Los Angeles. Record labels started closing their New York offices and all that kind of stuff. And then the real move when everybody was like, oh, something's really happening. Beyoncé and Jay-Z moved to LA.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, something just happened. You know what I'm saying? Because with that, they're moving their businesses. They're moving their influence. They're moving, you know, that kind of thing. Was like, oh, there's definitely a wave happening. And so, you know, it's tough. So that year, though, I was absolutely miserable and I was really ready to go when I first got my first paid gig. I told God, like, I just got a lease on an apartment that was far too expensive. And I was like, I'll just ask my dad, help me break my lease. And I'm just coming back home. It didn't work out. And I started posting videos of me singing. And I think for me, that was more of a confidence boost than anything. I didn't really book any jobs because of that. I actually booked a job based off an EP, my EP. So before I left for LA, I released an EP called On My Way, just kind of chronicling like me covering a whole bunch of different genres on the EP. And then On My Way was kind of like my song of like, I'm on my way to LA. I'm going to make my own path. And of course, I thought it was going to be so much easier than it was. But yeah, that year and some change really taught me so much. About myself, about God, about what this was actually about. And of course, I've learned even more since then. But that year, that was really just me and Jesus. Like, not even kidding. It just me and God. Me telling him what I wanted to do and like me thinking, oh, did you forget about me? I'm still here. You know, where are you? You told me to move out here. Where are you? And so when things started happening and the way they started happening, as quickly as they started happening, you know, because there are a lot of people who will say like, oh, you went to LA and you started killing it. I'm like, nah, boo. Like, it was a whole year of me being unemployed.
Yeah.
So I think when people look at your journey, they will always see it, the glory in it, because everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are comparing their story to yours. So they're seeing the negative in their story. So all they can see is the positive in yours. And the truth of the matter is, and I have to remind myself of this even now, all of us are having ebbs and flows. Some of them that the public can see or other people can see, and some of them you can't. That's why you can't compare your journey to anyone else. There's a scripture that says to compare yourselves among yourselves and measure yourselves by yourselves is unwise. Because not only do we have different journeys, we have different callings. So for me to compare myself to you, Alan, I'm always going to come up short. Your calling and your purpose is different from mine.
Yeah.
You know, we're called to different cities, we're called to different ministries, we're called to different family. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different. And so when you look at someone else's journey, understand you're seeing the part of their story, one that you can see because of your access to that person, or the part they want you to see. Because this is not easy for anybody. Even the people who get in it just to be famous and have money, it's not easy for anybody.
So true. Wow. And you're you're talking about really making sure that people understand that this comparison culture that we have, whether it's Instagram, whether it's especially in the entertainment industry, like, well, they're doing this, so I should be doing this. Like, that's not God. That's anti-God. God made all of us. We talk about how we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and how he knew each one of us in the mother's womb. Like, God would never be so foolish as to give any one of us the same job, the same path, the same thing. So I love that so much. So I want to ask you now, because you talked about the year, now we talked about the struggle, let's talk about the fun stuff. So what was the moment? I got to know this because I don't know the story yet. So everybody knows I'm hearing this for the first time like you are. When was that moment that you got that particular call that changed everything? Like, what was that moment like? And just start to kind of take us through it. We'll get back to our talk with Naärai in just one moment. But I wanted to ask you, how are you doing with your connection with your fans and your audiences? In this new industry environment, live streaming and video content are pretty much your only way of staying relevant and staying in touch with your fans. But a lot of us are confused and feel like we need to either have a crazy amount of technical knowledge or some incredible equipment or just a huge fan base to be able to make an impact with live streams. Or you're going live and it feels random and it just doesn't seem to connect the dots with what you want to do with your career. Well, I have a resource that could help you to make musical live stream events that attract attention, engage your audience, and build a platform that can last long after you stop the recording. So if you're interested in that, go to godandgigs.com/livestream. That's godandgigs.com/livestream and request our checklist to help you build a live stream event that can be monetized. That's a very important thing there. It can be monetized and can help you to build events that continue to build engagement over time. If you're interested in that, go ahead, tap the link in the show notes or go to godandgigs.com/livestream. Now let's get back to our talk with Naärai.
So, like I told you, I was ready to give up, and the Lord was like, post videos. And I'm thinking, I just told you I'm broke. Why are you telling me to post videos? So I started posting videos about 2 weeks after I post my first video. I do have a cousin out here on my mother's side. And so I reached out to him on Instagram because we were supposed to meet. And I saw that not only did he have his own choir, he was a vocal contractor. And I was like, this don't make no sense for me to have a cousin out here who's a vocal contractor and I can sing and we're not working together. He was hiring people I knew, like people I went to church with. I was like, nah. So I hit him up on Instagram and we've been talking for months about like, how are we going to make this work? So finally he calls me and says, are you available? I think it was like September 29th or something like that at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I have a gig and, I need a singer. And I was like, yes, of course I'm available. I'm sitting in the house. So I go to this gig and David Foster is our boss. And so for people who don't know who David Foster is, he was the balladeer. Any Celine Dion song from the 90s other than My Heart Will Go On, he produced. He produced the Bodyguard soundtrack, I Have Nothing, I Will Always Love You, I Want to Run to You. I mean, his credits are ridiculous. Earth, Wind, and Fire songs. He did Through the Fire for Shaka Khan. Like, he's a legend. And we go on this gig and he is our boss. And I don't just mean he's our boss, like he signed our check. Like, move a little to the left. Can you come up here? Okay, now you sing this part. Now you sing this part. And I'm sitting here like as a Whitney Houston stan, like, oh my God, I went from nothing to being directed by David Foster. And after that, my cousin invited me to be a part of his choir, which was both for, he releases music under Jason McGee and the choir. And then he also contracts choirs. And choirs are really big in Los Angeles. So anytime you see a choir on a television show, be it sitcom or live on a late night show or an award show, there are people who get those singers together and then contract them for that opportunity. And so I remember I sat with him and he was like, listen, I know you don't want to be in a choir. I know you're a solo artist, but if you stick with me for a little bit, I will make sure that we go different places and I'll always give you an opportunity to shine. Like, people need to know who you are. And that is exactly what he did I think I was with him for 2 years. Yeah, I was with him for 2 years. And that is exactly what he did. We did the underground premiere. We did all of these different things. And then towards the end of 2017, we started working with Logic when he did the 1-800, the suicide song. And so then that got me my first TV placement, because I told God at the beginning of 2017, God, I want to do something on TV. And I waited, of course, until September. So now this is a year. And I did the 2017 VMAs. And then I did the Ellen show. And then after that, I did the Steve show with a different contractor. And that kind of started the ball rolling in a totally different way. So now I'm working in the industry, right? And it's seemingly the happening of the growth happened fairly fast. So within a year, I went from not having a job to doing television spots. And then I remember I had a really difficult end to 2017. My car got totaled in an accident, almost lost my apartment. One of my show, like I built up this really big show I was going to do in LA. My first big show got canceled day of. And I was just like, you know what? Once again, like, I'm tired. You know what I mean? And a couple months later in January, a friend of ours, EJ Porter, who's my
shout out to EJ,
my producer, my mentor, he calls me about this audition that's coming out in January. And at this point, like I just told you, I've had a really difficult end to 2017. And so I'm like, forget it. No, I'm not doing it. It looked really suspect. I'm not going to say what the notice said just in case she wants to hire more singers, but it was like, you know, it was just really fluffy. And I was like, I've been in LA long enough to know fluffy from real. And so I was like, nah, I'm not having nobody waste my time. You know, I'm just not doing it. So he's on me about doing this audition. And I mean, on me. And it's a video audition. It's a video submission. And so finally I'm like, EJ, I'm doing this for you. He and my dad called me on three-way. Like, it was a big thing. Because he was like, I think I know what this is, but like, even if it's not, he's like, the casting director, because the casting director is out looking for singers, because no one in LA is auditioning for this because they think it was like A-list star looks for it. Like, it's one of those things. And I'm like, this probably somebody in their garage. Like, this is not. Yeah. So most of the professional singers in LA were thinking the same thing, and no one was auditioning. They kept sending out notices and kept sending out notices. No one was biting the bait. So the casting director now is calling people she knows personally. Like, do you know of somebody? So she calls EJ in Sarasota, Florida. EJ calls me in LA. Like, will you please do this? And I'm like, dude, let up. Like, no. So he and my dad called me on three-way. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. And I'm doing it for you. I just want you to know I'm doing it for you. I told God at the beginning of this year, and it's really interesting as I'm telling this story, like, I have these very poignant moments. So I told God, Lord, I say I'm looking for new opportunities. I want to grow. So whatever audition comes my way, I'm not going to say no matter what it is. And so I've been reminded of what I told God just a couple weeks before, because, right, this is January, like the third week in January. And so finally, I go to my friend's house. I ask her to film me doing this video submission. I send it into the casting director. And at this point, I have an idea that it's Beyoncé. I have an idea. It's the timing. I knew she was doing Coachella that year. And it was just starting to feel like, I think this may be Beyoncé. So a couple weeks go by. I hear nothing from the casting director. I'm like, I'm sure they went on into, because at this point, I've submitted myself for a lot of stuff. I've been in LA now for almost 3 years. And I've submitted myself for a lot of stuff. When you don't hear anything, it means they pick somebody else. Go on with your life. So I'm leading worship at church for midweek. And I go out in the lobby as the sermon starts and check my email, and the casting director has responded. And I'm like, what in the world? I auditioned for this a month ago. So I see there's an invitation for an audition, and it's on a Sunday. Like, everything about it was just weird. It's on a Sunday afternoon. And so I'm like, okay. And so I think that was like a Wednesday. And so it was the following Sunday. So I went in, she was asking for more submissions. Like, do you know of anybody? If we're taking more submissions. So I resubmitted a video, and she responded back, and she was like, I actually prefer your first video. I'm going to keep that. That's what we like. It's like, oh, okay. So then after that, I get invited to a Sunday audition. We go in, we sing for like 5 hours straight. While we're there, we find out that it is Beyoncé at Coachella. And now the pressure is something different, right? Now it was just a gig, but now it's like, like, you know, I grew up on Beyonce, Destiny's Child, and Beyonce's solo career. So now this is her at legend status, and this is her comeback after having 2 kids. And so there's a lot of pressure on the gig just as a whole because this is her comeback. So I basically just give it my all. And, you know, they do this thing like, you know, releasing people while the audition's happening. So it's pressure. Like you watching people come in with you and you're watching them say, you know, we no longer need these 5 people. So I make it to the end count of people. And then I go on home. And I remember when I left, I was like, God, I give my best. Whatever happens, help me to just keep my peace about it and to not get my emotions involved. And about a week went by and I found out I got it. And it was just like, after the 2017 I'd had, it was just, you know, just God's faithfulness. You know, when we have those difficult moments, we don't realize like nothing is lost on him. He sees everything. And I think it made that experience that much sweeter because I had been in the gutter during 2017, just emotionally and different things I was going through personally. And like I said, how the year ended.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I get the gig, and for a month and a half, I worked with her every single day. And it was just absolutely life-changing.
That's what I want to ask about. Because now you got the gig, and I'm so interested in, because we've all seen the documentary now. Like, my daughter plays it 24/7. Like she's memorized it, right? So just like the kids watch Frozen is how young Black girls watch Homecoming, right? Mm-hmm. So just tell us, you know, I know you can't take us back behind the scenes to everything, but just give us some moments about the amount, the level of intensity and the just what you experienced as an artist being in that arena, preparing, and then of course actually doing it. Like, just what did that feel like for you?
I know for me, I knew there was a certain mentality I wanted to have when I went in. I know for some of the singers, it was just cool to be working with Beyonce. My thing was, what artist gets to work with the greatest artists in their industry? This is an opportunity for me to learn. I was like, Beyonce never got an opportunity to work for Michael Jackson or Diana Ross or Whitney Houston. You know, this is my opportunity to learn. So I went in with eyes and ears open. I didn't go in caught up in, oh my God, Beyonce's my boss. I can't wait to flex on everybody when everybody finds out. No, I was like, this is a master class and I'm literally here. So I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can. And, you know, I learned how things work well, what to do. I learned a little bit about what not to do, because like I said, this is her first time doing something this large.
Yeah.
There were mistakes. But she's just an incredible boss, an incredible leader. She would literally start off the day like, okay, so this is my intention for the day, and this is what I want to do. Let's pray. You know, like she's a different type of person, and very down to earth. I was not expecting that. I mean, you can't just roll up on her either. You're going to get tackled. But the other thing is, she'll just walk up to you. I remember one time I was in the lunch area. She'd all asked us to be vegan. That's another thing I don't think people know. And so we were in the lunchroom there where they had food. And of course, we're all trying to abide by what she wants, especially because she would just walk in sweats. Like, you're thinking she's going to come in with like a whole, no. She would come in looking really regular. So you'd be in there eating chicken and she walking on you like, hey, what you doing? She was to this day, like that for me as a creative, and even the way that I create now, it changed me forever. Watching her be so unapologetic about her vision. I think it's something every Black girl should watch. It like brings my heart so much joy to know that your daughter's watching it, because that was one thing I used to tell people, you know, when I would try to express in words what it is to work with a Beyonce, and also not violate your NDA.
Of course. Exactly.
So, I would just try to say, like, I wish every Black girl could watch what I watched. It would be so liberating and so freeing. And we didn't know she was making a documentary. I didn't put that together until later 2018, what was going on.
Wow.
But I'm just so grateful people had an opportunity to see even just and what I'm telling you, you guys only saw 10%.
That's
You're working 12, 13 hours a day for a month and a half. And the dancers have been working since January. The band, the strings have been working since November of 2017. So they could only show you 10% of what happened.
Unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
you've just taken like just that number one, like I kind of, and what I was kind of gonna go with and explaining like how I hear that and how I think some of our audience will hear it. We assume a level of excellence because we see the end result.
Mm-hmm.
So something in me already knew there were, months of rehearsals. I kind of know that to do a show like that, or for her to be able to pull that off, that it had to be the level of intensity and the level of detail that you're describing.
Right.
What makes the difference in what you're telling me is the person that is the actual person. You see what I mean? Like, it's not just a machine that creates this.
No, it's a person.
People that actually see the detail and make this their business, and inspires me because, like you said, especially for the women in the industry, but also for all the creatives who, like you said, sometimes feel this pressure to take the shortcut because for whatever reason, right? Whatever reason, whether it's we feel like someone's going to talk about us or whatever, we say, oh, well, that's not really what I saw. So I should just, kind of be like a mouse and just like put it down. And so that you've inspired me because I feel like now I know even more that when I do have a urge to get something right, like I should hold on to it, just like you saw in that homecoming, in your preparation for that show. So before you go ahead, I want to make sure you talk about, because I mean, you got to talk about before we go ahead to the next thing, the actual show itself. Like, just talk about like what that moment was like, because
I mean, you work, and that's why she works the way that she does. And people don't even realize, like, I remember I was sitting in rehearsal, like, she gave up college, she gave up high school. That's what produces what you see when you see her. You're looking at sacrifice. You're looking at somebody not going to the club and turning up all the time. You're looking at somebody who didn't have time to date a whole bunch. Like, you're looking at somebody whose entire life has just been getting better. So she works the way that she works all those hours so that when you perform, it's already in your muscle memory.
Right.
And so even when something goes wrong, it's so embedded in you, you just do it. And so when the show actually came, we had never watched her perform with us. Every time we were rehearsing, she was directing. So the first time we ever watched her, and I remember her choreographer said before the show, he was like, you're going to be tempted to get lost in watching her. Do not watch her. Do your job, because she will distract you. And there were moments I would be up there like, oh my God, that's Beyonce. Like, you're in her full Beyonce glory. Like, the way she attacks her choreography, the way she sings, the way her stage presence, like, it's easy to want to watch a concert, but it just was unbelievable. And then to be introducing Black culture in that way, she was very intentional about that. And I went to a Black college. I went to Howard. I remember our first sit through watching the show. She wanted us to come watch the show to feel the energy or the spirit of the show before, like, our first day of work. And I remember our MD asked around, he said, what does this feel like? And I said, well, I went to Howard, so this feels like home. He was like, that's funny. Well, not funny, but he was like, that's exactly what this is. And so, the first weekend, Coachella is primarily a white audience. So the Black national anthem and all the different they were interested, but it was just like their mouths were agape, like, what's happening to us, So it was just amazing. And then I never performed for that many people. I think that both weekends were around 250,000 people. And so all you're seeing is hair and eyeballs. And you can hear the reverberation of like, like, as soon as like when we walked on the risers, they think she's with us. And then she does that amazing walk to the riser stage. And that's really iconic with the drum roll. It was just watching all of the hard work we were doing come together and then having fun. But at the same time, it was so ingrained in our brains. It was second nature. And so, I didn't really have an opportunity to know what it looked like. I went on YouTube and watched a couple of bootleg clips because that's all we had for a year. That's the only way we could watch it. it streamed the first weekend, but nobody had seen the second weekend until the documentary came out. And that was the most fun weekend for me because that's when, first of all, the kids came that weekend knowing all of the words, all the choreography. They had made replicas of the costumes. They then that was more of the more multiracial group. So now we have Black people who understand what we're referencing. And it was a turn. Second weekend was a turn up, like for real. And then she brought out different guests. She brought out Destiny's Child both times, which was incredible. I've never heard people scream that loud in my whole life. When they came out the bottom of the the bottom of the stage. But it just was one of the most amazing experiences ever. But at the same time, and I'm going to be really honest, I remember telling myself, don't get caught up in this as if this is yours. You know, you're screaming for Beyonce. You've got to work for yours.
That's good. And the fact is, you said it that the inspiration that you were getting is something that you can apply to your own career, to your own life, to your own creativity, just like she had a chance to learn. I wanted to pivot a little bit because this was not the last time you were going to be placed in yet another situation where you were among greats, among legends.
Yeah.
And so going from 2017 to these experiences must have been just, again, I love the fact you said you were grounded beforehand. So take us a little bit fast forward to the next time. Like, and number one, you can tell us, the moment after Beyonce, the homecoming, if there was like a little bit of a letdown, because obviously you're coming from the mountaintop. So
absolutely there was. You have that amazing experience, but like in our business, now you're unemployed. So we did the last show April, I want to say 21st. So now I have to figure out how am I going to pay June rent. I got May's rent. How am I going to pay June rent? And I remember I just was lost. Like, I knew I didn't want to do, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, I knew I didn't want to do her tour because I didn't want that to become my life. When you sing background for a star like her, that's your job, period. You can say you want to work with different people, but that's really what you do. Because anytime she decides she's going to go do a show, be it a personal show or be it a tour, you're going. And I knew that's not what I wanted, but I was going back and forth with God, like, okay, maybe I do want the tour because then I at least know how I'm going to pay my bills until the end of the year. And so I found out I didn't get the tour. Some of my coworkers did, and I'm so happy for them because they were the ones who wanted it the most, and they're amazing. Steve and Keandra and my brother Jerome and then Tiffany. It was just awesome. But I went home. Of course, I didn't feel that way at the time. I was like, I didn't get it. I went home and did a couple gigs with my dad just to kind of like regroup, and came back and struggled, honestly. Struggled probably from May until August, which seemed like forever because I didn't know when it was going to end. And I started working with a different contractor, Anthony Evans, who's the son of Bishop Tony Evans in Texas. He's also an amazing worship leader. He's a great vocal contractor. And my name somehow got to him. And so we did a music video for Tori Kelly and Kirk Franklin for her gospel record called Never Alone. And then we did the Corden show. And then I did a couple sessions with Anthony. And we did this song with Lil Dicky called The Earth Song at the beginning of the year. And then I ended up getting a musical called Witness Uganda at the beginning of 2019. And was just kind of like, that was me getting back to theater and acting. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. At this point, Kanye now has started something called, Kanye West started something called Sunday Service. And I thought they were all crazy.
I think a lot of us weren't sure at the beginning.
Yeah, I thought they were crazy. They were singing outside in the wilderness and wearing weird clothes. And I was just like, this is nuts. And so my brother, my friend Steve, who I did Coachella with, he's working with Kanye at this point. So he hits me and is like, yo, I submitted your name for something. Are you available? I get a phone call. Are you available? No, I'm doing a show. So then my show closes. Witness Uganda closes in the beginning of March. And once again, I had a really difficult March. Within a week's time, one of my college professors and one of my dear friends, Janice Freeman, who, I didn't see often, but when we encountered each other, it was just always love. They passed within 6 days of each other. And I was just like emotionally spent. And so I get this audition. I don't really want to go. I just want to sit in my house and be sad. And I said, my friends, anytime my friends refer me for something, just out of my love and respect for them, so they don't look crazy, I always show up. Because anytime you refer somebody, you go out on a limb. You put your reputation out there, saying,
right.
oh, my friend is dope. So a bunch of my friends who referred me for this, and I didn't know what they were referring me for. Everybody was like, oh, I submitted you for an audition. Like 3 friends hit me, and I was like, oh, okay. Alrighty. So I go to the audition, and I, funny enough, the day of, my friend was doing my hair, and I was talking the whole time, like, what are they doing? They're outside. What are they wearing? Just the whole day, just talking crazy. Go to this audition, put my stuff down, talk about my friends, hug everybody's neck, sit down, turn to the girl next to me and say, so what is this for? Because it was just an invitation. They didn't say who it was for. And she said, oh, this was for Kanye West Sunday Service. I grabbed my purse and I'm about to walk out. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, sit down, you're supposed to be here. And I was like, dude, I have been talking such crap for weeks. What do I look like coming to the audition? So then the other thing was, one of my friends who referred me, though he wasn't sitting in the audition, he was doing another gig at where we rehearsed. He peeked his head and like, oh, hey, I was just checking in to make sure you're here. So I was like, so I go in, audition. I realize my friend Steve is on the creative team. So he's sitting in my audition. So he would have known had I not shown up. So I go in, I sing, my boss at the time asked me a couple questions. I leave, I don't hear anything. Now, mind you, I don't know what this is for at first. This is again for Coachella. I didn't realize that. And people have been offering me Coachella gigs for the weeks leading up to this. And I've been telling everybody no. One, because people don't realize this, but because Coachella is so big and because everybody wants to be a part of it. And this is these recent years, like since Jay-Z did it, that's really when Black artists have been invited to do it. Before, it was, like I said before, it was a very white festival. So now that rappers and R&B artists and pop artists, are getting it, Latin artists and Black artists and Asian, you know what I mean? Now a lot of people are able to go. So it's a thing now. And so a lot of times when people go to Coachella, they don't pay well, right? So a lot of people offer me amounts, and I was like, yeah, that's not equal to the amount of work. Because at this point, I've done Coachella, right? I know what's going on.
You've been to the top already. You're not. It's
right.
not. You're not impressed.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I'm not. I've done, even to this day, I've done Coachella as best as it can ever be done. If I'm going back, it's because I want to go back, not because I'm desperate. I want to go with the specific artist, or I believe, you know what I mean, whatever it is. So, I'm invited to go back. I told a bunch of people no, Alan, like I really did. So when I did decide to take it, the funny thing is, this is also how God works. I knew I was going to have to move my apartment. And so I knew I didn't have the money for my first and last month. So I was like, I'll take the Coachella gig. It'll cover my first and last month. And then I'll be done. I'm not coming back. Because while I was there, they were like, we want you to come to service. And at this point, I've also just joined a new church. I'm now a worship leader on my team. Like, I'm getting to know my pastors. I think I know where my life is headed. Think, keyword think. So this would just be a complete disruption. So my boss at the time asked me, like, we really want you to come on and do Sunday service. And I'm thinking, no, I'm cool. And so, so what ends up happening is I ended up just moving across the hall in my apartment. I don't even need a first and last month. I ended up taking the gig thinking I had to, but it was all God's plan. I went and did Coachella, and I saw Kanye's heart for Christ. And that's what won me over. I saw he wasn't playing around. There were all these really beautiful moments where the Holy Spirit would come in and we would just be up there worshiping, like it in rehearsal, on that mound, just in worship, on our knees, on our faces in worship. And I was like, now that I can see this is real, and now God, I understand why you have me here and I can stay. But my thing was, I'm not playing with God. That's the one thing I will stay at my church for free before I come out here and make thousands of dollars to play with God. And that was one thing one of my friends on the worship team was telling me last night. She was like, I knew it was real when I saw you go over there, because she was like, I know you don't play around. And I don't. I take worship, I take God, I take my relationship with Christ very seriously, and I've been blessed. I don't generally make music singing worship music, make money singing. My industry is quote unquote the secular world, and I'm fine there. I don't feel nothing about it. So to merge the two was also something I didn't even pray for. Like I wouldn't even thought existed, and I think that's one of the things most of us in the choir have been so grateful for is we made money working with some of anybody, and so to profess Christ and share the gospel of Jesus Christ and make a living off of it, and for him to be taking care of all of our needs and expenses, it's the great provider that God is. It's incredible. Like I said, I didn't even have the faith to pray for what we're doing. And, to be a year into it and to have watched Kanye's life change, and it's also been incredibly convicting watching a new believer. You know what I mean? When you've been a believer for a while, you kind of get a little casual with God. And so watching somebody take everything so seriously, the music he listens to, the clothes that he wears, the way he speaks to people, the way he expresses, even when he's displeased with something, I can watch the change God has made in him. And it's just been nothing short of amazing. And then to watch the impact we're having around the world.
Yeah.
People around the world who don't even really rock with God like that are playing worship music in their homes. I've had people reach out, I was going to kill myself, and I heard your record and I changed my mind. Or one of my college classmates, she said her boyfriend's mother just passed, and they played Jesus is Born as her mother-in-law was passing, and then afterwards, in the weeks afterwards. And so, God has just been able to use us to reach people that the four walls of the church weren't going to reach. And it's just been really humbling. So I've been with him. This is the longest gig I've ever had. Most of us have ever had. I've been with Kanye, like I said, for a year. We've done 2 albums together. And, like I said, for as long as I'm here, I'm so grateful. But like I said before, even with the moment with Beyoncé, and this moment, this quarantine moment, I've had an opportunity to go, okay, God, what is it you want from me?
Yeah.
I've supported so many different people's vision, and I'm grateful for it, because when you serve other people's vision, my dad always quotes the scripture, God does not forget what we do in our labor of love. Like all those seeds you sow will bear fruit, but we also have to do the work on our own end to prepare ourselves for what it is that he wants to do through us personally, individually. And so that's really what I've been focusing on, going back to writing music consistently and, okay, what is my purpose? What am I adding to this great, melting pot that is the music industry or the entertainment industry? And so, I've been very, very blessed.
That's beautiful. So beautiful. I mean, again, like I think just letting you explain it, because you saw it with your own eyes, you saw the transformation, you saw, again, the creative, and we could talk all hours, so I know we got to start wrapping it up, but just, again, your transparency about not quite knowing what, you saw 2 visions basically come to pass. This is kind of summarize it like that. You saw the Beyoncé vision come to pass. You saw Kanye's vision come to pass. Neither one made any sense at the beginning.
At all.
Like to probably even to themselves. Like you don't know how God like kind of birthed it, but they might have been like, really, God, you want me to go out in the middle of the desert and start doing worship services with people in a circle singing with a whole bunch of musicians remixing R&B songs into gospel? Like, that's what you want? I can imagine that Kanye probably didn't see that one coming.
Right.
And the fact is that I think the scripture that popped into my mind is that, calling those things that are not as though they were.
Yes.
And so many things in both your life and a lot of creators' lives, we don't see it first because God literally starts from nothing. He always starts the Latin ex nihilo. He starts from nothing.
Right.
And we come into that step, and then you stepped into nothing at LA. You stepped into nothing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, nothing becomes something. So I want to ask you this, because I know we got to wrap it up. We got to do this talk again because you and I got so much to catch up on.
Yes.
But I want to ask you really just to when you take all this into totality, because it's such an incredible story. Like you said, now you're focusing on your own work, your albums, and your what you're going to be doing, both with your music. And I love your single. You saw me that I posted it for God and Gigs, or I think my personal, when you did Shallow.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have such amazing stuff still to come. Look, you said when you were young earlier, Get out of here. Used to, I mean, talking about when I was young. So I'm gonna call you out for that. So you're still a young artist, especially coming, man. I want to go to the whole I got kids your age thing, but look, so I just want to tell you that clearly God has had this trajectory for your life. So I want you to kind of go back and think about that young lady at 13 and 14 years old. Yeah. And what would you tell her that, equated to somebody else right now? Might be in Sarasota, might be in New York, might be in Miami, might be in LA, whatever. But there are people like you back then who were in a musical family, but didn't really know what they wanted to do. Right. And were just starting to get this inkling that this could be possible, that you could be an artist that literally sits at the feet at the greatest and gets to work out their own vision while somebody else is working out theirs, right? Because you served your dad, you served, with Beyoncé, you served with your church, and you're now with Kanye. So all these places, like, you're developing to this amazing person because God's putting all these experiences in you. So what would you tell that young girl, 13, 14 years old, now that you know what you went through?
That's such a heavy question. It's funny because I've been really talking to her more recently. That may sound crazy to some people. But I think it's really important to go back to the beginning of the dream and remind yourself of your why, or to edit your why if it needs editing. And one thing I've been going back to is like God's idea of who I am.
Okay.
What I would tell my 13-year-old self is, girl, chill. All this works out. And I know that's what everybody says when they talk to their younger self, but I really would say, like, I was always like, oh, what college am I going to go to? And how is it going to, like, I want to be this person and I want to do this. And so probably the first thing I would say, because I think at 13, I wanted to be Angela Bassett. Be yourself. Be yourself. You are so gifted and so in ways you haven't even discovered yet, ways you haven't even imagined yet. You are gifted. So just investigate and explore all these different ideas you have, the songwriting, the acting. Don't place limitations on yourself. Don't listen to what other people think of who you are, even the good stuff. Sometimes try to take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of times, even with people's compliments, they can be kind of limiting. People would tell me at 13, oh, I can't wait till you take over your dad's company. Well, that's not my calling. Thanks, but that's not for me. I tell my dad that, and he was very understanding, but you have been called to this. That's not for me. So I think I would just say explore, be free to explore all of these different gifts and ideas that you have, and trust that God will help you zone in on what is for you in every stage, because it's going to change. I still want to do more acting. And I was telling my best friend the other day, I said, I'm realizing God just wants me to trust him with the acting. Because I was out here, I'm going to find an agent and I'm going to do this. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't even have time to do those things because I wasn't even here. So I was just like, okay, God, I'm going to make sure I prepare myself. And so when the door opens, I'm ready. But I realize I can't force that door. But the thing I've been saying recently is, and this is for any creative, spend time, especially as believers, spend time with God asking him, how do you see me? Because God's vision for your life and everything he's called you to is built in his idea about the whole reason for him sending you here, which is the whole Jeremiah 29:11. Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. I had an idea for who you were going to be. There's a way that he sees us, and when he sees us, we think he sees our imperfections and our flaws and things we don't do well. When he sees us, he only sees the good he put in us. That's what catches his eye, period. Because the blood covers everything.
Yeah.
So it's so important to get back to that place of like, God, how do you see me? That's what I've been asking him specifically this week. And it's been liberating my own ideas of who I am creatively, because there were all these things I was like, well, I can only do this. Well, I can only do that. Well, I can only do this. And it's like, who told me that? And why do I believe that about myself? I have this really beautiful calling of, I always say, winning the culture for the kingdom. My workspace is generally not in the church. I'm not really called to the four walls of the church, just the four walls of the church. God is doing really something really cool right now, where he's creating a bridge from the church to the culture. And it's not that we're trying to become like culture. That's not the goal. But it's to reach people through the culture for him. That's what I'm called to do, and that's where I'm called.
Yeah.
And so it's just been really freeing my idea of who I am. Your industry is going to tell you who I am, because like you were saying before, starting from nothing, in many ways, Alan, I'm starting from nothing with my own music, because everyone in LA only knows me as a great background singer and a great session singer. So I'm at this moment starting from, and I'm really not starting from zero. Like I said, I have creative options. I have at least producers I can call, songwriters I can call if I need people to sing on my record. I'm not completely at zero, but this is a totally different space that people who know me have never seen me. And if I were just to define myself based on what others think of me, I would think I couldn't do it. And for a while I did. And so it's divorcing yourself from even the good things people think about you that limit what God has placed in you, and freeing yourself to be who God created you to be. There are no limitations in his vision for you. So that's what I'm really getting back to, especially during this time of complete isolation, which I think is why God is allowing this to happen partially, is just to reset. And like I said before, we acknowledge how this is affecting those who it's affecting directly.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
For those of us who it is not, he's giving us an opportunity to get really quiet and really still. And I would encourage anyone, I don't know when you're going to post this, I would encourage, and we also don't know how long this is going to last. Sit with God and get really quiet. Quiet your phone, quiet social media, quiet the phone calls, and just get really still. Because I think he's going to speak and say and do some things in this time that are completely, because make no mistake, this is the beginning of a new decade. He's going to do some things in these coming months that's going to completely change the trajectory of your life. I really believe that. And
Amen.
I'm speaking that over myself. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You absolutely, no, you answered that, and so much. You spoke over pretty much the heart of what I do and what we all are doing. I believe the people that are listening to this, I believe they already have our heart. Like I believe God kind of knits that together. Every time I've done a workshop or anything, like the right people were listening. So obviously, just like you were in the right place, right time, God put you where you needed to be. Someone's listening right now that needed to hear precisely what you just said. So we don't have to be in charge of that. We just cast our bread about the waters. We sow our seed, and then God waters, right? So God is watering somebody's creative dream, their vision, their calling right now, because you spoke with such honesty and such transparency about what we really need to get, which is, again, see ourselves how God sees us. And once we see what God sees, then we'll be able to do what God says. You know what I mean? And we just have to be able to be humbled. And yeah, you're right. This season, I pray it will be very short, and that by the time people are listening to this, but it doesn't matter. Like anytime, absolutely, we should be able to be still and know that he is God. Like that doesn't change, whether it's quarantine or whatever. Like we always have to be in that posture. Naärai, this has been just, I want to keep going, but I can see the clock. I know I'm going
to edit all of this. I really do.
No, this is too good. I'm going to have to pick I can't pick any good parts. So listen, just quickly tell the people how they're going to find you, how to connect with you, how to follow your music. Because I know some people, I'll put in the show notes, but some people like to write it down, and we always got to hear things more than once. So tell them how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on YouTube and on Instagram under I am, and I'm going to spell my name Naärai. I am Naärai. I'm pretty easy to find. And I'm going to be releasing new music this year. So many incredible things. So make sure you're checking in, because I always update. I don't always update about my job. That's just my choice. But I do update about some of the things that I am doing. So definitely be on the lookout. Amazing things are coming out of this time.
Oh, if they're anything like what you've already done, it's going to be way more than you could even imagine. My goodness. So Naärai, thank you so much for spending this time on the God and Gig Show. We're going to catch up again. Got to do a part 2. You've got too much stuff to share. So we want to just continue to bless you. And thank you so much for being a part of this. Well, my friends, there you have it, a story of overcoming obstacles, of getting centered with your purpose, and then getting to learn from the best, learn from the experiences when you are given the chance to be around people who have achieved at an incredibly high level and taking those lessons and learning how to apply them to your own career, your own life. Naärai, thank you so much for everything you shared with our audience. You have to continue to follow her. Check out the show notes so you can see how you can stay connected with her and continue to follow her career as it develops, because I can't wait to see what the next thing Naärai is going to find herself doing. It is such an inspiration to talk to her, and I pray that you were encouraged. That's our show for today. I don't really have any major announcements, but I would say if you enjoyed this episode, you really, really should consider joining our creative community on Facebook. The creative community on Facebook is where we rub shoulders. We get to interact more often than just during the podcast episodes. I do a creative checkup, which is a video every Monday on Facebook where I can talk with you and share our stories together, and we can really interact in a more authentic way. And we also can get you networking and talking to other artists who are just like you to find out really what you need and to be able to get the answers and the solutions, especially in this day where we're disconnected and a lot of our events have been changed around and we have to do business differently as creatives. So I would highly encourage you to go to Facebook, simply look up God and Gigs Creative Community, and you'll find us. There's only a couple of questions you have to answer, and it's a public group so that you can jump in right away. Well, that wraps up our show. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this has blessed you, and continue to stay positive, stay encouraged, continue to follow the path that God has led you on as you continue to make the world a better place with your art. God bless you. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us here at the God and Gigs Show. Please leave us a review on iTunes, like our Facebook page, or visit godandgigs.com and tell us what you thought of this show. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, go create something amazing.